Welcome, campers, to session 2 of day 2 of Goldcast Summer Camp. We're excited to have you all here. I hope you all tuned into the session with Ashley. It was super valuable. The playground kind of idea of making sure that you're delivering great content, repurposed content in a thoughtful, intentional way is a great framework. As I mentioned, if you joined the last session, I was taking a lot of notes. Hopefully you took a lot of great notes too. Really good actionable stuff. And today we're here with another session that's going to be really actionable, really tactical, around how you can repurpose long form videos like webinars, for example, to help drive SEO and traffic. Our speaker today is going to be Stacy from Hootsuite, who unfortunately could not make it, but she did record her session for us. So you'll still get all the great value. You'll get all the great tips from her as well. Fun tip, she did use Recording Studios, which is one of Goldcast's new products, to record her pre-recorded webinar and event. So it was in high quality. Everything's great with it and good to go. Also, she is willing to kind of help answer some questions after the event is over, since she cannot be here today. So please still do use the Q&A up in the top right. We'll make sure that we get that over to Stacy and get those questions answered as best as we can. So I'll stop there. Please tune in. Here we go. We'll bring up the video from Stacy and have her walk through how she increased the SEO to her on-demand and webinar pages by 150% with repurposing.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me today at my session from webinar to web traffic, the one week that boosted our SEO for webinars to about 150%. So my name is Stacy Combest. I am the senior webinar and virtual event producer at Hootsuite. Fortunately, I can't be there today. I'm dealing with one of our camp plumbers and a plunger, and his nose is missing now. I don't know. It's an event and I have to go figure it out. So I recorded today. If you have any questions throughout my presentation, just let the Goldcast camp counselors know. They'll send them over to me and I'll make sure to answer any questions that you might have today. So as mentioned, I do run our webinar program at Hootsuite. If you're not familiar with them, it's the leading social media management platform that helps organizations connect with their audiences, track performance in the webinar. I'm a one-person team and I see everything from the very beginning to the very end of all of the execution. One of my main roles is to create the strategy for each of our webinars. And I use intent data, feedback from our audience, and campaign goals to shape every theme that we use for all of our webinars. Now, every webinar that I do produce typically meets one objective, whether that's drive pipeline, support customer retention and upsells, or simply just to help social media marketers out there get better at their job. I work really closely with our internal teams, everyone from customer marketing, sales, product, what have you, to make sure that all of the messages align not only with what our audience is asking for and looking for, but they also meet our business objectives. And I'm always looking for new ideas, formats, and engagement tactics to keep things fresh and impactful. I'm really excited today to talk to you about a test that we ran a few years ago with our webinars. Like I mentioned, I do create a lot of webinars over the year. We average about one webinar a week. It can go up a little bit bigger than that depending on the year, and it can be a little bit smaller. It really depends on seasonality and kind of what's going on around the business and within not only us internally, but externally to see how many webinars that we produce. And we produce everything from channel discussions, product features, customer stories, and we're even known to throw in a game show from now and then. So if you've ever been to one, please let us know in the chat. They can get really fun. And our content was doing really, really well on the live experiences, but after that was over, they just kind of sat there. They really, as I like to say, would sit and collect dust. This rich content we had just wasn't working as hard as it could be. And People weren't finding the on-demand webinars organically because video in and itself isn't very search friendly. So we asked ourselves, how do we unlock more value from what we have already created? How do we turn great live moments into ongoing traffic drivers? And the answer came about in kind of an interesting way. At the time, I was sitting within our growth team right alongside our blog and our SEO folks. I kept hearing about how well long-form blog content was performing in search. And at the same time, I was talking to my boss about how difficult, I should say, SEO is for webinars. Most of the content that you get on a webinar is in that video. Typically when you promote a webinar, we have a title and we have a short landing page, and that's it. It can be very difficult to really put a lot of SEO words in there and make it friendly. And we were trying to figure out ways on how we could overcome that within the on-demand webinars. Because again, our live webinars were doing really well. It was that on-demand afterwards that we were kind of struggling with. So together we decided and tried to find a solution. And we thought, well, if the blog and the SEO teams are doing really well with what they're doing, why don't we try to apply some of that to our on-demand webinar content? So we structured our transcripts into blogs that would tell a story, and then the webinar would bring it to life. So I picked a few top performing webinars. These were webinars that I knew would translate really well into blog. We had a really high attendance rate during the live webinar. They were highly engaged, and the speakers brought a lot of examples with them. What we did was we used rev.com to do our transcripts because at the time, Content Lab was still in production. Then I worked closely with our SEO team, and we restructured those transcripts into the blog format. We also then took the examples from the speakers in the webinar and we put those within the blog to try to keep it visually interesting as well as while you're reading it. And then afterwards, we had a call to action that if you wanted to watch the webinar live, you could do it. And it was all within one single page. So anybody who was coming and finding these webinars could read basically a blog or a synopsis about it. And if they wanted to, they didn't have to leave and try to find the webinar. They could register right then and there and get that on-demand webinar that they can then watch. And then from there, we optimized it for search. So it wasn't a huge lift, I would say. The people that I worked with were folks that were sitting within my team. So as I mentioned, blog and SEO. I actually worked really close with one of our SEO writers at the time. It was actually really great because as a global company and I work remotely, I don't get to see many of my colleagues in person. And the person that I worked with happened to be about a 10-minute drive down the road, which is very rare for me. So I got to meet her in person and we worked on it in person, which was really awesome. Like I mentioned, we did use Rev for the transcriptions. And then I tapped her on the shoulder to help structure and optimize it to make sure that it made sense from an SEO perspective. And then I just kind of ran with and led all of the production work that had to go in the back end as well. So we weren't necessarily creating new content. We were just repackaging what we already had and trying to put it into a smarter way. So as I mentioned as well, we used Rev for the transcripts because Content Lab wasn't around yet. The process did take us about 2.5, 3 weeks, I think, to do 3 webinars. Now with the Content Lab, we can do this in seconds. So just a little plug for Goldcast. It's a huge time saver, and it's actually opened the door to creating more repurposed content for us, being that as I am a one-person team, I no longer sit next to our SEO folks. A lot of this work then falls back onto me to make sure it gets done. Content Lab is fabulous for that. So talking about key learnings and the results. The results surprised me. I have a kind of a sneaky suspicion that the rest of the team was going to see a positive result, but being the first time I've ever tried a test or experiment like this, I was hopeful, but I was not expecting to see such a huge lift that we did. So it really answered that question of, should we repurpose our on-demand content? How should we do it? Does it resonate? Yes. I would say 100%, 150%, if you will. It was very amazing how our results came about. We did see that huge lift in our organic traffic. Our webinars now became searchable with those keywords. And they ended up even becoming top performers at the time just for our blog content. So that was really awesome. So what worked? Treating the content like a blog, not a recap. I think with the transcript, it made it a little dry. So we kind of put more of our personality into the blog content itself. We structured it in a way that not only humans could follow and understand, but it made it super easy for search to find and pull out and rank it high. So we had clear headlines, real examples, and helpful takeaways. And again, what didn't work was just publishing a raw transcript. It didn't engage and it didn't rank. So it's really interesting, I think, because as a webinar producer that I've been doing this for a long time, people are always asking for the transcripts, but those, again, can be really dry, not as engaging. And I have found that instead of providing transcripts, giving them this top takeaways content or the blog tends to work a lot better. But I'd be interested to know a lot better in terms of, audience engagement and then what they do following on after that. So I would be interesting to know how many people that are joining camp today send out transcripts or do any type of repurposing of their content afterwards. The biggest unlock for us was really simple, is that we already had everything we needed. We just needed to reframe it and reshare it in a different way. And it just brought it back to life. So future planning. This experiment took place before AI in general, whether the Content Lab or others, really took off. So it was very manual work for us. Now that we have AI at our fingertips, we have the Content Lab, we have all the LLMs out there that can help us. It really takes the work that would take weeks, days, weeks, what have you, to complete, and it wraps it up very, very quickly for us. So it also really kind of opens the door to continue planning this type of content for our webinars. Knowing that this worked so well for us in the past, I'm in the process of a complete redesign for all of our on-demand webinar content, with the blog style format being at the center of that. So it's really interesting to see what the AI can do and help us create that repurposed content. More so, because I know this works, I have now started to plan ahead with the expectation that I'm going to do this type of repurposed content more often. So planning with repurposing in mind is really important here. You want to make sure that while you're brainstorming the content for the webinar, you also are keeping mindful of quotes or stats or pieces throughout that webinar that you know that you can pull and create, whether it's a snippet of a video clip or put it on social media, as a, hey, did you capture this? In case you missed it, this is what our leading speaker said here. I've even gone so far as inserting questions in an initial speaker syncs to pull out some of those quotable statements from the speakers that I can use even in promotion. And then finally, if there were 3 things to take away today that you can steal and try, is Really, what I want you to go away with as an overarching theme is to test and don't be afraid to test. Test, experiment. If you have a great idea, if you have a wild out of the box idea, try it out and see what happens. This is a prime example of, I don't know if this is going to work, and oh my gosh, the results were amazing type of test. You don't know unless you try. So start with a top webinar that you have and feed it into the content lab and let it spit out a version of every piece of style of content that you can get from there. Tweak it obviously to your brand name. We all know AI is our assistant, not our worker, if you will. We still need to bring that human element into it and put it out there and see what it does. You might be surprised on how well that repurposed content works for you. Second, think like a searcher or a customer, not a viewer. So when you are searching for something, I'd be really interested to see how many people still go to Google or Bing or whatnot to do their searching, or if they jump on like a ChatGPT or a Gemini to do their searching. I'm starting to do a little bit of both myself, so I'm really interested to see how other people are now searching. And even still, when you do these searches, if on Google, you have an AI generated response at the top. So you need to start structuring your content and your keywords for someone to discover without even knowing the webinar existed. Think about how you're searching, the type of mannerisms or phrases that you're using, and make sure to optimize your content so it's easily discoverable. And then finally, tap on your SEO or content team and become friends with them. They know search like the back of their hand. They'll be able to tell you what works, what doesn't work. You don't need a big team to do this. One person, one ally who knows how to optimize and search goes a long way. All right, that is it for me. Thank you for taking the time, about 17, 18 minutes to sit and hang out with me. Again, I apologize that I couldn't be there in person. I'm going to figure out this plumber situation, but send any of your questions over to that Goldcast camp counselor. They'll send them to me and I will reach out to anybody who has a question directly and make sure that I get that answered for you. Thank you again. Have a great rest of your camp.
Awesome. There was a lot of great stuff there from Stacy. Crazy numbers in terms of jumping and getting 150% lift in SEO traffic. And I think I don't know if she mentioned it, she also got like a 38% bump in on-demand views, which is incredible. One thing, Stephanie, I don't know if I saw the Kookaburra link that you sent last time, so please do send that again. There was a lot of chats happening, so I must have missed it. So obviously Stacy cannot join us today. So there's a bunch of great questions that came in. So I'll make sure that I'll send that over to her. There are a couple of questions that I feel like I can maybe answer too. So I'll try doing that, but I'll still send the questions to her so you can get some direct answers from her specifically. We have a few minutes, so I'll give it a shot here. So we have a question here from Oshin around, did you use AI tools to repurpose the webinar into optimized web content? So Stacy had mentioned, so they started using Rev initially to get the transcript. I think they were using internal like content resources to actually build out the blog content itself. Now they are leveraging more of the Goldcast Content Lab, which is built into the Goldcast platform, where we will actually repurpose the webinars right after they're done. Or if you have stuff outside of Goldcast, you can upload it into Goldcast, and we'll do the same thing there. We actually can get you the full transcript, or we naturally just do it and repurpose it as a blog piece already, right? So you don't have to actually go and find a writer to create the blog content. You can also train our AI to make sure it has your brand voice. It speaks like your brand. It kind of structures things like your brand. So it really does reduce the amount of time needed to get this blog live. Obviously, like any AI thing, don't just copy and paste, double check it, review it. But it goes from, all this work to maybe like it gets you 95% there. You only have the last few kind of elements to get through to finally get that blog live. So definitely check out the next session too, where we'll go into more around Content Lab and how that works. There's a question here from Sarah Griffin. I think, Sarah, if you're the same, Sarah, I believe you're the one that won the prize from yesterday. So congrats, first of all. But secondly, she was asking what other content outside of blogs would you recommend repurposing webinars for? She had some suggestions of, Reddit, Ask Me Anything, short videos, quote graphics. So obviously you can take a webinar, and we'll do this with this event that we are running right now with Summer Camp. We'll create clips from it. You can get blog content from it. But I was writing down some things while I saw your question. So like we've done things in the past where we've taken webinars and made them into like ebooks, specifically more like mid to lower funnel type of ebooks, depending on the webinar content. We've done LinkedIn carousels that work really well. Like if you go to Content Lab specifically, you can get key takeaways and you can turn those into a great carousel for LinkedIn. Clips, which you already mentioned. We take a lot of our content, actually full recordings and clips, put them on YouTube. Obviously, YouTube is one of the second, largest search engine in the world, so a great channel to optimize for. But we also do speaker promos, so you can take clips, you can create social posts directly in Goldcast using the speaker's voice, share that with the speaker, and use that as a way for them to promote post-event, post-webinar, hopefully drive on-demand views from that way as well. So a few ideas there. I'll definitely share the question again with Stacy. I'm sure she has a bunch of other ideas as well. And let me see if there's any other quick questions here that I can answer specifically without Stacy's support here. One final one I'll just get to. I don't have the best answer for this, but I saw in chat where Michelle asked gated or ungated. And I think actually Eric also asked when should we ungate our webinar content. I don't have an answer. I'll definitely send this over to Stacy. But I did see Logan had mentioned that they started, and Logan works at Yext. I've talked to Logan many times. He's a great person around webinars and events and content. So definitely reach out to him if you have questions. But he had mentioned how they've ungated a lot of their webinars and on-demand content, and it's had good success. So I just wanted to bring that up because I saw that in the chat and it connected back to the questions that came in. So again, I appreciate you all joining. I'm sorry that Stacy couldn't be here. Again, there was a plumbing issue in the camp, and so she had to get that fixed. But I'm gonna send all the questions that you shared and you asked, and I'll make sure I'll get that over to her. Please do log into our next session that's coming up in about 5 or 7 minutes from now, where I'll be joined by Ernest on our Goldcast team to specifically walk through how you can leverage Goldcast and our AI to really simplify the repurposing process. So again, you're about 5 minutes. Go take a quick break, grab a quick snack from the camp snack room, and I'll see you again in a few minutes. Thanks, campers.